Hi team, welcome to 10 Talks. You know that we are on a journey to discover how women win our way. Kathy and I are teaming up with other women and just saying, how do we do this, right? None of us have the answers. It's all about the power of team. And today we have a great guest just being able to share her journey as a college coach. So if you're curious about hearing some really interesting answers to some great questions, from a three-time National Coach of the Year, someone who's been coaching 19 years in the college game, here's the questions we're going to talk about today. How to have a successful career as a college coach, how to recruit, how to train with purpose and passion, how to care and compete, how to win every year, and how to change and win. So whether you're in sports, business, life, whatever you're doing, I'm sure some of those interest you. So thanks for listening today. And Kathy, intro our guest for us.
Yeah, thanks, Carlette. So, in the world of scorekeeping that is sports, one of the ways that you keep score is who's trying to hire you. And so the way that I'm going to introduce Kirsten is that every time there is a Power 5 job opening, I get a call from an administrator or a search committee that is saying, hey, do you think we have any shot at Kirsten? And so a mid-major coach at Creighton for 19 years, just one place the whole time, has built that program into a perennial top 25. And I think in the last 5-6 years, being a mid-major and competing in the top 25 has gotten significantly more difficult. So, Kirsten, you're one of the stars in our women's coaching universe and are so aptly suited for helping us discover some of the things that we're after. And so let us turn it over to you and get your story and your comments about, how have you succeeded as a professional coach? What got you here?
Well, first of all, thank you. And I appreciate those kind words. I always say I don't think it's any magic pill or anything like that. I think it's consistency in how you approach things every single day from a work ethic standpoint. And I think maybe a little bit of the X factor is consistency with emotional intelligence and consistency with your players, that they know every day, although some would say they don't know every day, but hopefully that they know every day what they're going to get from you as a human being. And hopefully, I think a really important thing within our program is they know life is bigger than volleyball, and that not only myself, but our staff cares about them as human beings much more than we care about how they can spike a volleyball. So on a basic level, that's kind of the foundation of what, we try to do. And, again, it's just trying to be better every day, I think.
And did you come like fully formed out of the box here? I mean, so 19 years ago, you jumped right in and you knew that, it was all about emotional intelligence and consistency and everything else. I mean,
no, I mean, I think I always, when I talk to young coaches, last week I contacted one of my coaching friends and said, I am the worst coach. And I think sometimes you have these people like myself that get on this and they think, oh, they have it all together. They're confident. And I still have those struggles, but I can tell you when I was a junior college coach, which was 3 years prior to my time at Creighton, I had many times I was getting out and I could tell many stories of making mistakes. A lot of my mistakes early were communication driven. I don't like to upset people. I like people to like me. And sometimes that can be a hindrance to a coach. Now, I think you can communicate in a kind and respectful way, but avoiding communication got me in trouble as a young coach. So instead of addressing an issue that probably could be alleviated early if I dealt with it, I'd sometimes wait till it would blow up. And then I'd have a big reaction, like kick a kid off the team, when in fact, if I'd just mentored that young woman, I probably could have had a different outcome.
So how did you grow your EQ from a coach perspective, really being able to certainly, figure out your definition of success, figure out what matters is the whole person and rather than, just the athlete component, because your job is about winning. You have to produce results. And so tell us about just that journey from you developing as a coach to where you are today.
Well, I think a lot of times you learn through your mistakes, right? Anytime crisis would hit, one thing that I think I do decently is try to reflect on how, when this happens, if this happens again, how I can do it better next time. I do think even when I was, again, you're still building as a coach, right? So I never want to say you have it figured out. But when I was a younger coach, I think my players might say I made mistakes, but I always cared about them. I think that's who I am as a human being. So I think those things were ingrained in me. And I also think work ethic was, I working hard on something that I love. Now, I had some jobs before this that I didn't love and I didn't like to spend the hours, but I think anytime you find a passion, working hard has never been a challenge for me. But I think from mentors that I've worked with, I think they would say is that I can take feedback to try to be better. The sports psychiatrist that works with us for years will say one of the reasons he was able to help our program was because when the players had things that they didn't necessarily love about me, I could take that feedback and try to be better. And some coaches he works with don't want to hear it. So I think being open to be better and to know that we're not perfect is a really important component to growth.
So let's talk about how do you win every year, because that's the key, is that we can have a good year or a good moment. And, you had the challenge and also accepted the challenge to do it every year. How do you win every year?
Yeah. Well, I think every year you're trying to be better, and, there's ebbs and flows for sure. I do think confidence breeds winning. So, you get to a point that your team expects to win, and you've got to make sure you're fostering that. At the Division I, at the college level, recruiting is going to be key. So I think the diligence of continuing to work hard to continue to bring great players into your program. Flexibility, like we ran a 6-2 last spring. I don't philosophically love a 6-2, but I thought it was the best for our personnel. Being willing to adjust things and be creative. And, I think of the way I taught passing 19 years ago to how we teach it now. There's evolution to all of those things, but I think you can't ever be comfortable, right? So I think even when you have that year that you are so good, it's got to drive you to be better. And when you have those good years, if you work your tail off, it will advance your program because recruits are easier in theory to get. But we've also tried never to be a program that's locked into one player carrying all of our load. We've had star players, don't get me wrong, but we have to develop other pieces around them so that when X graduates, we're not falling apart as a program.
So Kirsten, talk about recruiting. Recruiting is the ultimate competitive event right now in all of the sports world. If you're a college coach, it doesn't matter how well you coach if you don't have talent at a certain level. And so how do you find the right fit for you, and how do they find you?
This is really kind of an interesting question. Because I think there's some, we're in a hotbed of talent, right? So we're going to look regionally. But I do think, and we'll look nationally too, don't get me wrong, but fortunately, we're in a situation, and that's how we built it, especially at the beginning when we could draw kids regionally to come to Creighton. But I think the bigger thing is finding the kids that work in your system. And I think that's been something over the years that has really, especially as new assistants come in, because they'll say, one of my assistants used to say, this is a Booth kid, or this is not a Booth kid, and what that means is I want players that, I guess I'd say, if you need me to walk you to go to class, this is not the program for you. If you need me to do a curfew check, this is not the program for you. Our program and what the resources we have here, we are going to give you everything for success. We're going to teach you the importance of sleep. We're going to teach you how to eat correctly. We're going to provide the financial means and the things to make sure you can do those things. We're going to train you. But if you need me to scream at you constantly, I'm not the right fit. And I say that in the recruiting process. Like, if you're a player that needs a coach to just ride you, I'm not that coach, because I want players that want to do it out of love, that they love this so much and they love their teammates and they love the opportunity to compete, that they're going to get enough sleep, that they're going to go to class. So there is a right kid, I think, for my coaching philosophy. So that's been really important in the recruiting process. And I try to be really transparent when I'm with a recruit of, hey, if you want someone that's screaming at you to get off the net, I might not be the right coach for you. I'm much more likely to find all the positives that you're doing, and I'm going to feed you that way as compared to writing it. Again, there's lots of feedback, don't get me wrong. There's a balance to all of that, and there's accountability. But I think there are kids that are more, fits into our system than others.
Is being a woman part? I mean, obviously the kids know. People say, "Oh, I don't see gender." It's like, oh, well, the players you're recruiting see it. So is it? How does your femaleness and being a woman, how does that play into all this?
Well, it's interesting. I don't talk about, hey, coming to play for a female coach. It's not an angle that I talk about. I probably should, but what I do talk about is being a mother. So I guess that brings in the female thing. And these are the things I've learned after being a mother. I'm a better coach now that I'm a mother, because when I bench a player, I know firsthand the pain, because I've seen my kids go through that pain that they are going through. So I am more empathetic to saying, like, I know it hurts. Now, I also know as a parent, when my kid doesn't get the role they want, how I expect them to react. They can be sad, but they still need to work hard and they still need to be a great teammate. So, so those things are important in the process. That's made me a better coach. The other thing is, I have probably the proudest things, and we just had alumni weekend this week, is watching my alums flourish. And so many of them, I mean, I brought 4 into practice, and there were 2 NPs, a lawyer and a pharmacist. And that was luck. I mean, and they all have families. And so what I want to role model to them, and I do talk about this in recruiting, is that they can do whatever they want in life. And I want them to know that my kids and my family are number one, but that doesn't mean I don't care about the team a lot, but that they are going to intermix a little bit. I mean, there is going to be some intermixing. And I think it's important for them to see, because I think sometimes as women, we say, we can do it all. We're going to separate these things and we are going to do it all. When in fact, I think we should make them cohabitate together effectively. And I want our players to see, myself and actually all of my assistants have children, and finding a balance and, being able to be, successful in whatever they want to do professionally, if they choose to do a professional job, and be fantastic parents. I don't want to be average at both. I want to be great at both.
And how have you really found that interaction with your athletes? For them coming in, have they come from being coached by women or coached by men? Do you notice a difference? Does it stand out at all? Because, this is a really great time in history just for female women athletes to be able to have some power and to start to be able to, we have the transfer portal. We have all kinds of new opportunities that they get to choose. Mm-hmm. So they can think when they're being recruited that, yes, you're their perfect person. And then they can come and it can feel really different. And now they're learning to manage their emotions and they're rookies at it. They're, opposite of where you are. How's that working?
It's interesting. I've never really paid attention. So as you were asking that question, I'm trying to process males to females. Honestly, in my opinion, a great coach is male or female and a lousy coach is male or female. It is about having someone that, all those things that we talked about, caring about the players, knowing the information, consistency. And fortunately, a lot of my players have come from phenomenal programs, but I'm even processing in my head, a lot of them played for females, and I can think of some that definitely played for males. Interestingly, I have a freshman this year that first time in 19 years articulated that she wants to play for a woman. And I've never had, it's just not been something that I've had a player say. I mean, of course, they're not going to say, actually, I did have a player a few years ago say that she wanted to play for a male. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But, obviously, if they're going to want to play for a male, I'm not going to hear that in the recruiting process. So, but I did have one say female, but I will say, I have had many over the years say, I really looked up to myself and Angie, my longtime assistant, as role models on being able to manage work and family in particular.
And what do you think in terms of what you've learned as a person coming into a key role? Did you have female models? Did you have male models that you were learning from? Because bringing that family dynamic in is unusual because, that's not always something we've been able to do. So how did you learn it?
No, I did not have a lot of female role models, but here's the thing that changed for me. Terry Pettit has been a mentor of mine for years. Terry Pettit was it's a long story, but the connection that got my name in the hopper for this job. He's longtime Nebraska volleyball coach, retired now. When I had a child, he said, go ask to see if the baby can travel with you. And I was like, what? Again, this is 05, right? And I went into my AD, who Kathy knows, well, he's just retired, but he walks on water in my world. And he has been the biggest advocate. And I could tell stories on him on support too, but he said no. And Terry proceeded to call him. And the next thing I know, he's in and he's like, we'll pay for someone to travel with you. So with that child, my husband traveled with my newborn, and she was like a doll. She never cried. So it worked out perfectly. Like the players never heard her cry. My next baby was an August baby, which is not ideal for a volleyball coach. And so my 3-week-old started traveling with us, and she decided to cry a little bit more. And my mother traveled, and she did about part of the season. But I will tell you, I truly believe it kept me in coaching because I think I was still teetering on whether this was a long-term career for me. And I think, mom guilt, whatever you want to call those terms, it was heavy when my children were that age. I'm kind of through that now. Now I feel like my kids get way more out of this than they get things taken away too. I mean, I'm not around as much, but they get a lot out of it. But I really struggled when they were little, thinking, because society's telling you you're a bad person. You're supposed to be at home with your child. And I fortunately had a situation that I probably could have done that. And so I struggled a lot with that. So had Creighton not stepped up and done that, I don't know if I'd still be coaching today.
Well, and I also hear, had your mentors not gone to bat for you, because, that was really, you heard no. And sometimes as women, when we hear no, that's it for us. And then we go into, do I give up coaching or do I stay? And thank goodness you had this support team around you that kicked into gear and said, we're keeping you in it. How do we set other people up? How do we coach women to do that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think we need, once these things start happening and they become more of a norm, I think that makes a big difference. A couple things that Bruce Rasmussen said to me more than anything, I think are worth mentioning, and it has impacted me. So I have my first child's planned perfectly. It's a May birthday. So that's good for volleyball coaches. So we have a surprise pregnancy of August. And I'm not getting those phone calls that Kathy alluded to early. I'm still early in my career. And I went in and I was sick to my stomach. Like I know, and I'm afraid he's going to say, I know he's not going to fire me or anything like that, but I'm afraid he's going to make me feel bad because I feel bad. I don't want to have an August baby. And he said, I'll never forget. He said, you'll be fine. You have great assistant coaches. And I'm sure in his heart, that's not what he was thinking, but that was really impactful for me to just have someone be supportive. And then the other thing, when my first baby came along, his response was, you'll be a better coach. And I thought, what a great response, like instead of saying, oh, well, we'll manage this, it was, you're going to be better for this. And so those are small things, but keep in mind, I had somebody else when I told him I was having an August baby, who was also a mentor to me, say, don't you know how to make that not happen at that time frame? And they were joking, but I still remember it because I was in a place of not a good place. So I always remember, I've only had one, I've had one assistant for years, but I always have said, like, if she walks in and says, I'm having a baby in August or October, I'm going to say, we got this, even if I'm like gut ache inside. But I think we need to train people. I know that seems small, but if you're the person getting those conversations, you don't understand how big of a deal it is to be supportive.
Yeah. So let's talk about your team. And so, how do you, in terms of, okay, you have this environment where you said, look, I'm not going to be the badass in this, I'm going to have some expectations of you, but yet you're going to know I care about you. You're going to know that your teammates care about you. So do teams, how do you deal with conflict? Again, when we talk about this, it sounds like, oh, well, this is easy. It's not. Every team has kids that don't like each other. There are kids on your team that you like better than kids, you care about all of them, but there's some you don't like. I don't even know your team.
To coach.
Yeah. And it's vice versa. There's some that put up with you and there's some that think you walk on water. So, when things are going sideways.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I think part of my coaching journey, most of my coaches were yellers. And so if you talk to my early coaching days, I tried to do that. And what I learned was I was just bad at it. So, I think one of the things you learn as a coach is that you have to be true to who you are. It's not really the way I communicate. So it's not that I didn't want to be a badass. I just really don't have it in me to be a badass. I learned that. Conflict is interesting. So first of all, I think we try to do a lot of proactive things. So we talk about every year at the beginning of the year, there's going to be conflict. We're going to have issues. How do we respond? So again, we know all this stuff, but reminding them, if I have a conflict with somebody, we need to make sure that we're not getting a lot of people involved with the conflict. It's junior high stuff, right? But reinforcing that if you have issues, you need to go directly to the person. I bring up quite often, if you have issues with me, if you're not understanding your role, if you're upset, come in and let's talk about it. You might not like what you hear, but at least we'll discuss and you can explain why you're upset about. And a lot of times they don't like what they're hearing, but at least they get a chance to say, I'm frustrated with this. Why am I not getting a shot? And I can explain, at least in my way, of why they're not getting a shot. We talk about how they want to be talked to on the court between each other. And it'll be specific enough. I remember a player last year, we always do the same session each year, saying, this specific player is the only one I want to talk to me when I'm in a bad place. Like, she's the one that can get me out of this. The rest of you, don't talk to me. And then another one this year was players that are like, I need to be touched. Like, come and give me a hug, come and give me a high five. And then the next kid up was like, do not touch me. It drives me nuts. I hate when people grab my hand. And one of the players was like, yeah, it took me 2 years to know that I was grabbing her hand and she hated when I grabbed her hand. So, and isn't it funny how things like that, we all have things in our life that drive us a little nuts. And if they just knew, like, hey, maybe don't say my name wrong every time, it would make me happy, it is amazing how that, and the same thing for coaches, like most of them want technical feedback from coaches, or maybe one of them this year, who I thought liked me so much, she's like, Booth, when you talk to me, it stresses me out. Don't talk to me during the matches. Have one of the assistants talk to you. But great feedback for me, right? Little sad, but good feedback to know, like, I'm stressing her out.
So thank you so much for this conversation. It has been, enlightenment for me and just such a journey for us on really figuring out how women win. What would you say are your words of wisdom to anyone listening about really how you have won your way?
Figure out who you are, be true to who you are. I think maybe supersedes everything, and be that person every single day. And I think keeping it in perspective, we are playing a game, and a game is meant to be fun. And I think you get the best out of people when they are having joy. So make it joyful as much as possible, and I think you'll get the best out of your athletes.
Winning Strategies team, thank you so much. This has been a great learning experience. Really appreciate all that you're doing for coaches, for women, and for the game of volleyball. So thank you, team. Go out this week and make it a 10-week for you. Figure out how you want to win, your definition, and be for each other as we're all on this journey. Thank you and have a great week.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thanks, guys.